Hey, it's John. Welcome back to the show. Welcome to my show on my 10 favorite albums from 1986. This is part three of a six-part monthly series I'm doing here on my channel, John the Music Nut, where I talk about albums that are celebrating a significant anniversary. In 2026, in January, I did 1966. February, I did 1976. I'm going to put this show out on March 1st, 2026 for 1986, and then in April I'll do 96, May I'll do 2006, and in June I'll conclude the series by doing my 10 favorite albums from 2016. So 1986, this is the year I turned 50. And I was really big into hard rock and heavy metal at this point. And I did like a lot of the other songs that were on the radio. I didn't often talk about them, but if I thought something was catchy, I enjoyed it. As time went on, I discovered a lot of other stuff from 86, stuff that I liked and then got to love eventually. Some bands that were more college rock back in the day, and I didn't really listen to college radio back then, and I discovered them later. So, my top 10, you're going to see a little bit of my youth, and you're going to see some of the stuff that I got into later on. And you'll see definitely a lot more of the stuff I got into later on when I go into my honorable mentions. So this will be my most hard rock heavy metal centric year that I talk about right now. So without further ado, let's start with the heavy metal, and let's start with the second album from the fantastic heavy metal band that has just put out what Dave Mustaine is saying is going to be their last album. This is Megadeth. It's my number 10. Peace sells, but who's buying? I remember hearing the debut back in the day. Hello, John Lutz. Thank you for introducing me to that cassette. And I liked this band, but then when I heard this, I was like, mind blown. I'll talk about more mind blowing as this episode keeps going. I love this album back in the day. I'm not as high on it as I used to be, but I still think it's great. First side of this album, I think, is wicked. Wake Up Dead was the second video, the first song. Very, very cool track. Next track is Conjuring. That was very, very heavy and wicked. The soloing on here is awesome. The end of the song with Dave's lyrics and vocals on here is very, very cool. Peace Sells is one of their most famous songs, led by that wonderful bass line from David Ellefson and those very poignant lyrics from Dave Mustaine, which I borrowed some lyrics to that song and I still repeat them to this day. What do you mean I'm stupid? 2 + 2 is 5. I don't know. This cracks me up. Love Devil's Island. This is wicked. Great bridge on here. Guitar playing on here. Chris Poland and Dave Mustaine's awesome. Good Morning Black Friday. I think it's the best song on the album, but yeah, very, very good. Wasn't into I Ain't Superstitious. That was the Jeff Beck group cover. I didn't know the Jeff Beck group cover back then. I mean, I always was like, oh, this is all right. One thing I didn't like about early Megadeth was they were putting cover songs on those first three albums. My Last Words, I think, ends the album. Very strong. Here's my number 10, Megadeth, Peace Sells. Well, who's buying? Number 9. Okay, this artist, I knew the hit singles and the videos from back in the day. Later on, I got deeper into his music. And this wonderful singer guitar player has a very strong catalog. This is Robert Cray with his album Strong Persuader. This is by far his biggest album. This is the only time he had big hits on pop radio, most notably Smokin' Gun, which I think still sounds awesome to this day. He is just this double threat, a fantastic singer, fantastic, very tasty guitar player. The production on here is quite immaculate. I mean, it does have a little bit of an 80s sound to it, but I think the production is well done. Like, there's not heavy reverb on the drums. It's just very classy. But there's a lot of other cool tunes on here. Right Next Door, Because of Me, was the second single, and that's very, very cool. I actually like that a little more than Smokin' Gun. Guess I Showed Her is great. There's a lot of great horn lines on these songs. More Than I Could Stand is very cool. More often than not, we're staying in this mid-tempo blues vein. I wouldn't even say it's rock. It's more R&B because it's just too clean and classy to call it rock. And there's not a lot of grit on this album. The song titles or the lyrics are primarily about falling in love or losing love. That's Robert Cray's thing. Foul Play is one about losing love. I suspect foul play. Yeah. So I Wonder's very cool. Fantasize, New Blood. Everything on here is very, very well done. As time would go on, a lot of his albums sounded the same, but they were always good. But I really enjoyed this album, a few albums after this one. This is my number 9, Robert Cray with Strong Persuader. Okay, my number 8, you couldn't avoid this man on the radio in 1986 through 1989, really. And this is a walking, living, breathing legend. But I didn't know that back in 86. This is Steve Winwood with Back in the High Life. This was a huge album for him. You could not avoid Higher Love back in the day. Higher Love was getting played on so many different radio formats, including Rock 107, WEZX FM, Scranton, Pennsylvania, the home of rock and roll, still locally owned and operated. That would give Steve Winwood a number 1 hit. And Steve Winwood, again, living legend. Spencer Davis Group, Traffic, Blind Faith, his solo career, everything he's done with a lot of class. It's very magnificent. Oh, and he made that great album with Eric Clapton, that live album. So much good music that he's given us. This may have been his most successful album, though. Freedom Overspill, with those classy horn lines on there, is very cool. That was a big hit. Back in the High Life again, it's a little more, it's more of a ballad, but it's very well done. You got nice mandolin playing on it. It was very, very cool. Finer Things was another big hit. And I think all these songs still sound great. Good deep cuts on here, too. I think Split Decision is one of the best songs on the album, if not the finest. Wake Me Up on Judgment Day, I really, really enjoy. Take It As It Comes. Sound on here, it's sounding like a contemporary 80s R&B sound to it, but songs are very well written. Steve Winwood, I mean, he's a walking, living, breathing legend. I love his music. It's my number 8, Steve Winwood with Back in a High Life. My number 7 is a group I was getting into at this point, wasn't buying the albums yet, but that would change with the next album, which I think is an absolute monster. And I saw this band on that tour as well. This is Queensryche with Rage for Order. Back in the day, Walk in the Shadows got played heavy on WRKC, Radio Kings College, when they had a metal show on Saturday afternoons from noon to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They played that heavy. I think that was the single they released to radio. But the video they put out was Gonna Get Close to You, which was so different, because whereas Walk in the Shadows was just this driving, awesome heavy metal track, which was really catchy. Gonna Get Close to You had a lot of keyboards in it, had more of an atmospheric feel, and it was very seductive, but yet it's so cool. It's a very different song. And you had some keyboards on this album, but I think it was all very well done. Jeff Tate he sang fantastic back then. Back in the day, he was one of the best heavy metal singers around. Absolutely. But Whisper's very cool. I Dream in Infrared is more, it's more progressive metal, I would say. A lot of these tracks on here, like Surgical Strike, which is more hard-hitting, Chemical Youth, which is very cool. It has a great bridge to that. London is an awesome epic, which they just started playing live again. I saw them a few months ago, except my favorite heavy metal band were the special guest. They did a wonderful version of London that night. I Will Remember is a wonderful angelic ballad. The vocals again from Jeff are fantastic on here. But other great songs, Whispers, great, Killing Words, New Regale. It's a top-notch album. Probably my favorite next to Operation Mindcrime. This is my number 7, Queensryche with Rage for Order. Yes. Gonna get close to you. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm some kind of lunatic. My number 6. It's a band that didn't release too many albums. They only made 3 proper albums, but the first album is great. The third album is a knockout. This is their self-titled debut, the Georgia Satellites. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, they're one-hit wonder, would keep your hands to yourself. Now, this whole album kicks ass. It's just a great kick-ass rock and roll album. I think Dan Baird is a fantastic songwriter. Whether you go through the Georgia Satellites or his solo bands, he's put out a lot of good stuff. Keep Your Hands to Yourself, of course, is like this Chuck Berry meets 1980s song that works well. You still hear it all the time. Battleship Chains was another single on here. I think this was a cover song. I don't remember who wrote the original, but it's very, very catchy. But Myth of Love is very catchy. Railroad Steel is more hard-hitting, as is Can't Stand the Pain. You got some driving rockers, and then you got these cool mid-tempo songs that work very well. Nights of Mystery, I think, is wonderful. It starts out with, just the guitar and Dan Baird singing before the band kicks in. It kind of ends the same way. It ends, very more acoustic, and then it kicks right into their cover of Rod Stewart's Every Picture Tells a Story. I like this version of Every Picture Tells a Story than the original. And I'm thinking down the road, I'm going to do a show about my 10 favorite songs where I like the cover more than the original. I think the cover of Every Picture Tells a Story that closes this album is kick ass. Everything's awesome on here though. Red Light's wonderful. Golden Light's wonderful. They're both different kinds of songs, even though they both have light in it. Over and over is awesome. This is my number 6 self-titled debut by the Georgia Satellites. My number 5 is a band I got into later. And I think Mark Divers got me into him. Hello, Mark, if you're watching. He got me into this band. And I bought this CD for my brother, Robert. Hello, Robert, if you're watching. And later on, I bought the album for myself. This is the Smiths, their third album, The Queen is Dead. Now, I talked about the Smiths before. I really love Mita's Murder. This is a great album as well. A lot of people say this is their best album. I can't really argue with that. It seemed like they really stretched out their musical aspirations on here. A lot of great tunes on here. I Know It's Over is a wonderful ballad. The title track is excellent. Frankly, Mr. Shankly is more of a rollicking feel to that, more of a jangly feel. Big Mouth Strikes Again is one of my favorite songs, if not my favorite song by the Smiths. One of my 10 favorite songs in 1986. You can check that out on Grant's Rock Warehouse. The Boy with the Thorn in His Side, that has the strings in there. It makes it a lot more elegant. That's wonderful. Same thing with There Is a Light That Never Goes Out. The chorus on that's wonderful. Some Girls Are Bigger Than Others is a great closer. Fiker and a Tutu is great. Cemetery Gates, of course, is great. Yeah, everything on here is wonderful. My number 5 is the Smiths with The Queen is Dead. My number 4, this was a band I knew about. I had some buddies who listened to them. This was the first one I owned. Slayer, Rain and Blood. This is like a 29-minute album. It just comes in, just destroys you. It doesn't really let up until Rain and Blood, the last track on the album, which starts out with the rainstorm, and it gives you a little bit of reprieve before it comes in and destroys you again. Angel of Death, is one of the most memorable and best songs by Slayer, in my opinion. But some of these songs they might slow it down a little bit in the intro, and then it comes in, just kicks your ass again. But this works perfect as a piece because it's so short, but the songs are just wicked on here. Altar of Sacrifice, Piece by Piece, Jesus Saves is kick ass, Criminally Insane, Postmortem, Reborn. Yeah, just there's a reason this album is respected as much as it is. It is a heavy metal classic produced by Rick Rubin. It's the production on here is perfect. It isn't too raw. Like the first albums, like Show No Mercy and Hell Awaits, they were a little too raw. You could tell they were kind of done on a cheap. This is a proper production, and it really highlights how great this band is musically. Fantastic musicians. I mean, it takes a lot of talent to play this fast. Wicked album. This is my number 4, which I had on cassette back in the day. I don't know what became of it. Slayer, Rain and Blood. Number 3 is a band that I actually got into on maybe the 1988 album, Green, was when I got into this band. And then eventually I worked my way backward. This is my favorite album by REM. So remember that when I do a album ranking on them in the near future. This is Life's Rich Pageant. Now, the most memorable song on here would probably be Fall on Me, which had a very memorable video, which they had the words on the screen, which is very, very cool. Begin to Begin is a wonderful opener that really, really kicks ass. Just a Touch is near punk the way it's played. These Days is a fantastic track. That's another one of my favorites by REM right there. A lot of songs on here, they're very upbeat, very, very jangly. It's considered more like their rock album, like of those IRS albums. Very, very strong though. Swan H is a little more mystical and whimsical. That's very, very cool. Hyenas, very, very strong. I Believe, Flowers of Guatemala. Yes. Excellent album. Album I really adore. And these albums from here, these are definitely all 10s. This is my number 3. This is REM with Life's Rich Pageant. My number 2 is a band that I did a weekly series on. And at one point, this was my number 1 album from 1986. And you could see them above my shoulder here. This is the Smithereens with their debut LP, Especially for You. What a wonderful album. So many classics on here. Pat Denizio was on fire at this point. The songs that are probably the most well-known are Behind the Wall Sleep, which was they would open a lot of shows with that. Blood and Roses was big on college radio. That even got played on the album-oriented rock stations back in the day. And it was in a movie, I believe, which the name of the movie escapes me right now, but Strangers When We Meet's cool. This is, if you never heard the Smithereens, they actually took the 60s mod music and they brought it into the 80s. The album is produced very well. Don Dixon was the perfect producer for this band. But they had this love for the 60s and the fact that they knew when to slow it down and bring different elements in here. Like a song like Cigarette, which is really slow but haunting, is very cool. I Don't Want to Lose You. It sounds a lot like something out of the 60s with the wordplay and the craftsmanship on here. Wonderful musicians. In a Lonely Place sounds like a Baroque ballad from the 60s. It's very well done. Excellent. Awesome track. Crazy Mixed Up Kid, Hand of Glory, Time and Time Again. Those are just classic college rock songs from back in the day. And everything on here is wonderful. This is my number 2, The Smithereens with Especially for You. My number 1's gone in and out. in the last 40 years or so, but I have to be honest with myself. The album before this was a real game changer for me when my friends Vince Yarmel and Frank Temerance introduced me to it. And right after they introduced that album to me, this came out, Metallica's Master of Puppets. This album still sounds amazing today. Everything on here is fantastic. And it's one of those albums where my favorite song, it always changed throughout the years. For the longest time, it was Welcome Home Sanitarium. Then it became the title song. These days, I would definitely say it's Disposable Heroes. And they were writing very creative, very musically challenging songs. They were writing long songs, but they took you on a ride. There were so many great hooks in these songs. The subject matter was always really important. They're singing about war and disposable heroes. They're singing about drug addiction, Master of Puppets. Leper Messiah is another song about addiction, which has a wonderful bridge to it. Orion, the instrumental, is wonderful. This was a showcase for Cliff Burton, who passed away not too long after this album came out. When their bus crashed and he was killed instantly, which was really sad. I remember that day when we found out that Cliff had died. We were talking about it on the school bus. So many great tracks. The Thing That Should Not Be is just very mid-tempo, menacing, excellent. And Damage Incorporated was a wicked closer. Battery was fantastic. You had that acoustic opening, and then they went into those chords and the unison guitar playing before they went into the main part of the song, the main verse, and it just had a tremendous pace to it. Wonderfully produced. 8 songs, 54 minutes, not a second wasted. This is my number one for 1986 Metallica Master of Puppets. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a recap of my top 10 or my 10 favorites. Then I'm going to talk about ones that came close, some other honorables, and I'll talk about a couple live albums as well. My number 10 is Megadeth, Peace Sells, but Who's Buying? My number 9 is Robert Cray with Strong Persuader. My number 8 is Steve Winwood with Back in the High Life. My number 7 is Queensryche with Rage for Order. My number 6 is the Georgia Satellites with their self-titled debut. My number 5 is the Smiths with The Queen Is Dead. My number 4 is Slayer with Rain and Blood. My number 3 is REM with Life's Rich Pageant. My number 2 is the Smithereens with Especially for You. My number 1 is Metallica with Master of Puppets. So, put these away and I'm going to go over some honorables with you. This is close. And this album, I got to pick up on CD because I saw them on this tour. They opened for Bon Jovi at the Kingston Armory on January 3rd, 1987. I still remember this show. Cinderella Night Songs. I got to buy this on CD. This is a kick-ass album. I thought all their albums were like 8s and 8.5s. This is the more hard-hitting, probably the most simplest musically. Every song is very good. This was close, but it took me a little while to appreciate Peter Gabriel's So. This had great hits on it. Red Rain, Sledgehammer, In Your Eyes, Don't Give Up. Very good album. This was close. Steve Earle, his debut, Guitar Town. This was a little more polished than the stuff he would do more in more of a folk vein. This is when he was more of a country artist. A lot of great songs on this album. Very, very good. This was close. Thank you, Peter Kerr, for introducing me to this album and asked me to do a show about him. The Cramps, Date with Elvis. Very, very cool. It's like psychobilly sound. I love it. This was close. The heavy metal part of me My least favorite Iron Maiden album from the 80s, but Somewhere in Time is a very good album. I think Wasted Years is a fantastic song. Stranger in a Strange Land, Loneliest the Long Distance Runner. Very good album. Okay, now I'm bringing this one out here because I want to tell a little story. Because this was very close to Rat, Dancing Undercover. To me, this is to Rat as season 4 was to Sanford and Son. If you're old school, you may know what I'm talking about here. Rat, from the EP through Out of Cellar, Invasion of Your Privacy, first 7 songs on this album, kicked ass. Great. First side of this album is great. Looking for Love, 7th Avenue, keep it up. And then the songs were average, and I don't think they ever recovered. I say this in regards to Sanford and Son because it was Sanford and Son was kick ass for the first 3 seasons. And then they had some issues with Red Fox. So he didn't do a bunch of episodes, and Grady took his spot, and the episodes were still great. Then he came back, and all of a sudden the writing wasn't that good anymore. And then all the shows became cliches. All of a sudden they're in these talent contests, and they're on game shows on some spoof of Let's Make a Deal, and it just wasn't as good anymore. It never quite bounced back. I don't know if Rat ever bounced back from the last 3 songs on here. Detonator was good, but I don't think it touches the early stuff at all. Now, let me give you a great live album here that I really love. Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble, Live Alive. He wasn't in good shape when he did this album, but I think this album really kicks ass. This would have been the Soul to Soul tour. You got a lot of songs on there, but you got some great versions of I'm Leaving You, Commit a Crime, and Willie the Wimp, and Voodoo Child, Slight Return. Very good live album. And here's another one that I never heard until recently. And there was a just bought this from somebody on Discogs lately, so thank you. This is Sting with Bring on the Night. This is more of a jazz album. It's a double disc. He had a jazz band around him, and what he's doing with some of his original stuff, his solo stuff, I should say, and the Police music here. He's just taking these songs and he's turned them inside out, and it's very, very good. If you're a jazz guy, you may like, or a jazz gal, you may like this album. It's definitely different. Sting started out playing in a jazz band. He was playing jazz before he joined the Police. So it just is very, very cool. So let me go into some honorable mentions. You're going to see some glare here. Let's see when I get this up for you. Okay, here we go. Crowded House, self-titled debut. I owned this album. I only bought it in the last few years. I remember the singles. The singles were amazing. I don't know the album well enough to go deep into it. I'll tell you that. Husker Du, Candy Apple Gray. I think the albums from Zen Arcade right through the end are great, except for this one. This one I think is very good, but they're great singles on it, certainly. David Lee Roth, Eat 'Em and Smile. That is just a great party album. I love it. Bad Brains, Eye Against Eye. That was an album that I found many years ago on eMusic. That's very cool. They were really expanding their sound on that from going from the hardcore sound that they had in the early albums. Van Halen, 5150. I used to like this album a lot more. I still like it quite a bit now. The production isn't the greatest. I mean, I will say Eat 'Em and Smile versus 5150, Eat 'Em and Smile I like. Bruce Hornsby arranged the way it is. As a heavy metal kid, I still loved this album. And this is one I bought on cassette back in the 80s, and I still really dig it. Miles Davis, Tutu. This was when Miles was embracing the 80s technology into his music. Marcus Miller had a lot to do with this music. He wrote this album. He wrote most of the songs on here. Tutu, maybe we'll be talking about that in the near future. Maybe I would have already talked about it. Motorhead, Orgasmatron. Very sludgy production, but when I listen to it now, it makes sense. I mean, it's kind of like Hotter Than Hell was for Kiss. It's very sludgy, maybe more sludgy than that. Poison, look what the cat dragged in. Saw them open for Rat the next year. Hello, Jill, if you're watching, my sister Jill. That was a very memorable evening, not just because of the show, but also because Brian Leachak was driving and he got a flat tire on the way down. None of us knew how to change a flat. He went with he was dating Mary Jean Baird. She was a cool chick. Yeah, that was a fun show. Dream Syndicate, Out of the Gray. Dream Syndicate was a band I only got into the last 10 years. It's a pretty cool album. I like the earlier ones more. There's a lot of good stuff on here. Chris Rea, On the Beach. Rest in peace, Chris Rea. I just talked about On the Beach not too long ago. I was doing a album more with Chris Rea's On the Beach, with Neil Young's On the Beach. This is a very cool album. I actually got into Chris Rea's music later when working on it was getting played on Rock 107. Zebra, 3V. Zebra's a really cool band. I might be seeing them in the fall. This album, they went a little more pop. They from their hard rock beginnings on the first two albums, but it's very well done. The songs are great. Meat Pup is a band I got into in the 90s when Backwater hit. The Out My Way EP is very, very cool. I dig it. Black Sabbath, Seventh Star. If you pretend it's not Black Sabbath, you realize it's actually a pretty good album. Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Liverpool, the album that followed Welcome to the Pleasure Dome. It didn't get nowhere near as much airplay, but I think it's very good. Keel, The Final Frontier. This is when they started to cross over. Gene Simmons was still producing, but they were trying to get a hit. They covered Patti Smith's Because the Night, written by Bruce Springsteen. The album was like half melodic and half kick-ass rockers. Pretty good. I saw them open for Quiet Riot in 86. Keel kicked ass that night. Fishbone, In Your Face. I got into Fishbone later on Reality of My Surroundings. In Your Face is a pretty cool album. I really, really dig it. Love that ska meets punk meets rock stew that they had going on. Jason the Scorchers, a band that I remember back in the day seeing their videos on MTV, and then 10 years later, I got really heavy into them. Still standing. This album's a little more polished. It's pretty good. I don't think it's as good as Fervor was or Lost and Found. I think those albums are with that EP and that first album, I think are wonderful. And Queen, A Kind of Magic. This is an album that over time I've actually gotten more into the ballads on them. At first I thought it was too ballad heavy, but now I actually like the ballads more than I like the rockers. So it's very, very cool album. So, and then there's a lot of other albums that year that I picked up that I quite like. I like Accepts Russian Roulette. I don't love it. Let's see what else came out in 86. Judas Priest Turbo. Same thing. I like it. I don't love it. I liked it a lot more in 86 than I did then. Saxon did Rock the Nations that year. They were trying too much to make it in the US. I mean, they were going away from their foundation. I wasn't too big on that album. So yeah, but there was a lot of heavy metal, like Europe, The Final Countdown. That I like the singles up. I like that album. I never owned it, but I always dug it. Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet. That was a very good album. I thought Side 2, there was a couple songs that were okay. And there's another live album from 1986 that maybe that will be discussed on the live cut in the near future. I'll just put this up. All right. So thank you all so much for joining me today. What do you think of my favorite albums here and my honorable mentions? Do you like my favorites more? Are there other albums on here that you would put on that I did not talk about today? What are your favorite albums from 86? Are you big into the heavy metal selections that I had from that year, as well as a lot of the college rock selections that I had, like REM and the Smiths and Dream Syndicate, several other bands. Please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching today. Do what you love, and I'll talk to you soon.